I want to ask you a very personal question. How is your mental health doing? Now, it's not a question many of us actually want people to ask, is it? I find that in caring for people, I find people are very willing to talk about their knee replacement or breaking a leg or having a heart attack, but very rarely do they want to admit, at least publicly, that they've got problems with their mental health. And yet 1 in 5 of us in British society suffer with depression. And most of us are either going to have to deal with it in ourselves or to relate to somebody who is struggling with their mental health. So it's important that we learn to say that it's okay not to be okay. And that we should be able to talk about that as much as we might talk about having problems with a food intolerance or diabetes or some other condition that we have to deal with. And the problem for us at the moment is that these issues are made much more real because of lockdown. The lack of human contact, the hunger that we have for connection that lifts our spirits, it's a massive need and part of an epidemic of loneliness that we are dealing with in our society. Now, I believe that we are a unity of body and mind, that you can't actually separate the two out from each other, or as Christians would say, we are a unity of body and soul, that there is a spiritual side to us as well as the physical, and the two are very closely connected. And of course we are. We have a nervous system, and our nerves are physical. Our mind affects our nervous system. It is part of it. And the two are deeply interconnected. So if our mood is low, if there is something that is causing us to despair or to fear or to be anxious, it's going to have an impact not just on our thoughts but upon our bodies as well. And in the same way, the other way round, if our bodies are weary, if we've not slept well, if we've exhausted ourselves, then that's going to have an effect on our mind. And the two are very closely intertwined, so that if you've lived through, let's say, a childhood trauma, you've been abused, or your childhood was unhappy, if you've lived through a relationship breakup, a divorce, and you still have the trigger memories of that cause fear to come from deep inside you, those are things that are, if you like, in our memories, but they also have an impact on our bodies. And there's a very close connection between the two. We shouldn't try to think that, here's the mind over here and here's the body over there, and we can somehow extricate them from each other. We are one whole, body and soul, and the two go together. And particularly if the soul is feeling guilty, if the soul is feeling that there is unfinished business that must be dealt with and we need to find atonement for something, that's going to affect our bodies. And if there's something we're trying to hide, it's going to have a physical response. The two are going to be closely related. How do you handle your moods? How do you deal with your moods? Do you tend to take your moods out on everybody else and say that it's their fault and that's the way the world is? Or are you actually aware, self-aware, of the way that you are and the impact that has on other people? It's very important for each one of us that as we grow in life, we grow to understand ourselves more, and we realize that from day to day we are going to be very different. We can get up in the morning and decide what clothes we're going to put on, but we often can't decide what our emotional clothes are going to be for that day. That will depend on a whole range of things. It'll depend on what we've been doing, whether we feel guilty about something, whether we feel disappointed or traumatized by something that's happened to us. It will also depend on just the way our bodies are and how physically exhausted we are. We were made to have 1 day in 7 as a day of rest. Christians believe that very firmly because it's explained in the Bible that God made the 7th day as a day of rest. And if we ignore that and we just pump through work all the time, then we're really going to struggle with our mental health. Someone has said recently that if we idolize our work, then rest feels like a sin. And there is a sense in which that has a knock-on effect. If we never rest, if we are always pushing ourselves to get done and to achieve, then we will always feel complete failures. And we don't know how to sit down and allow our body and our mind and our soul to rest and to switch off. And we'll therefore develop anxieties and restlessness and all sorts of neurological issues that will not go away because we are failing to learn how to rest. What I also know as a Christian minister is that I'm dealing with issues all the time that are intimately connected with people's mental health. So take guilt, for example. People feel guilty for their past, and if they don't believe in God and they don't believe in life after death, how do you deal with guilt and how do you find forgiveness? The wonderful good news of the Christian faith is that we have someone who has provided atonement for us to make us right with God, and that can be true for anyone. They can find atonement in Jesus Christ. They can find forgiveness. And the root of many of our problems comes back to that issue of guilt and how we deal with who we are and what we've done wrong. But there are other issues as well. What about fear? Fear of the unknown, fear of what life throws at us, fear of what this pandemic is doing to us. These are all issues that we're grappling with, and that's a spiritual issue. It's about learning to trust God. It's about learning to live by faith rather than just by what we can see. And these are huge and important issues for us. At the heart of the Christian faith is a person, Jesus, a man, who has experienced all our human experience, and yet he is God. He is the Son of God, and he made us. As the Creator, he knows how we are formed, and he knows our limitations. And if we come and we trust in him, what we find is that we are trusting in the person who knows us and who understands us better than we understand ourselves. I'm not saying that if you become a Christian, you will be free from all your mental health problems. No. You'll still be you, and I will still be me, and we'll still have to struggle with these challenges every day. But there is a spiritual answer that cuts to the root of anxiety and fear and guilt, that deals with the past and takes it away, and that gives us a future, which is a future of hope, a future of eternal life, a future that lifts us above and beyond the despair and the despondency and the gloom that we're going through in this current pandemic. As Christians and as a church at Grace Church Didcot, we care passionately about people's well-being. We want to help people. We want to serve people. If you're struggling with your mental health, we want to bring you good news and to help you discover that so that your life also can be changed. Jesus himself said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest."